Hello and welcome to Wellbeing Week, presented by Allianz and the Australian Olympic Committee and streamed live across the country and the world. I'm Amy Jones and I'm a water polo Olympian. This week I'll be talking to fellow Olympians as well as experts in the field on a range of topics that all contribute to our wellbeing. 2020 has truly been a year like no other for the majority of us. We've been forced to adapt, evolve and cope with new pressures, and for many of you, it's meant shifting your finish line back by 1 year with the postponement of the Tokyo Olympics. There's never been a more important time to prioritise your wellbeing, because while we're familiar with the stories of Olympic medals and personal bests, there's more to being an athlete than how you perform on the world's biggest stage. This year, our theme is Empower Yourself, which is all about being the best you can be in all aspects of your life. This week, we'll be covering everything from how to empower your passions outside of sport, plan your future, celebrate friendship, look after your mental health, and embrace your true self. Today, our theme is Empower Your Passion, and we'll be talking about how to use your interests outside of sport to fuel your performance on the field, court, course, water, or in the pool, and also make for a happier you. Every session this week is live, so if you're watching along and have a question for any of our guests, please comment on our Facebook or YouTube page, and we'll do our best to answer some of them by the end of the day. My first guest is someone you'll be very familiar with, and he wears many hats. He's an Aussie musician, writer, World Wildlife Ocean Ambassador, but it all started with swimming. Please welcome from the US, Cody Simpson. Cody, welcome. You have such a booming career in the music business. You recently took on the role, though, as a World Wildlife Fund Ocean Ambassador. Tell me, did your passion for the sea begin growing up in Queensland?
Yeah, I grew up on the Gold Coast of Queensland, so just being around nature and around the ocean growing up, it was just inherently ingrained in me, and I didn't really have a choice but to care about it because I was around it every day, and I started to see, some of at least how human activity can and does directly affect the state of our planet. So that inspired me to want to at least do, what I could to raise awareness for what's happening at the moment, on Earth.
It's wonderful to hear that's such a strong passion of yours. Now, before everyone came to know you as a musician, I wanted to touch on the fact that you're a competitive swimmer, actually a Queensland state champion, no less. Tell me, what did you love about the sport, and what role did swimming play in your early life?
Swimming was and still is such a massive part of my life. I grew up with two parents that both competed for Australia, and so I was born into it. I remember being thrown in the water before I could walk, and it was then that, ever since I can remember, it's just been such an important part of my life. And I grew up competing in the sport probably from the age of 9 till about 14. And during that time, anybody that swims, even at that age, trains pretty hard. And it taught me a fair amount of discipline that I was able to take into other aspects of my life moving forward once I stopped swimming and was, presented with all these sort of opportunities in music and in other areas that I couldn't necessarily say no to. It was the discipline and the focus that I was taught that carried me through, and was able to apply to other endeavors.
Now, I did want to ask you about that, Cody. You mentioned discipline there, because a lot of athletes say that sport teaches them really great life skills that they can take into the next phase of their life. Other than that kind of discipline and probably commitment to a larger goal, what else did swimming teach you growing up?
Swimming, I've always been somebody that's been fairly self-reliant, and swimming is a sport in which it requires extreme self-reliance. You're obviously you can't rely on a teammate, it's a very solitary sport, you know, even the training aspect. It's like you're really in your own head a lot. And it taught me to be okay and comfortable with my thoughts and being alone and staring at a black line for hours on end and being comfortable in that space. And I think it taught me that solitude is something to cherish and not be scared of. And that self-reliance is extremely important in all aspects of life too.
It really is. And I understand you have a couple of mates that are Olympic swimmers. So even though you live in the US, do you still keep up with the sport quite a lot? Do you follow what's going on?
Yeah, I still jump in the pool quite a bit just for fitness. And, you know, I have a lot of friends over here in the States, at least, that and back home that are, you know, still competing at a high level. And, you know, I'm able to keep up with the sport quite closely.
It's really good to hear. Now, Cody, we've covered music, swimming, the ocean. What are some other things that you're passionate about and enjoy spending time doing?
Reading and writing. I've always been an avid reader and a writer. I put out a book of poetry last year, and that's just something that I think comes hand in hand a little bit with my music and my creativity. But it's also an incredible escape, you know, for me. I enjoy reading, and it's a relaxing escape that you know, I find is a better alternative than, say, video games or something like that.
A bit more productive, perhaps.
Yeah.
Now, I see a couple of surfboards in the background there. Are you still a keen surfer?
Yeah, I forgot about that. These aren't mine. I'm definitely not sponsored by Billabong, but they're a buddy of mine that I live with out here in LA. So we got a nice keen collection, though.
Yeah, absolutely. I wanted to ask you, Cody, you mentioned reading, writing, you still swim. Why is it important to make time for these things outside of your actual career? How do they contribute to your overall sense of well-being?
I think a balanced life is more important than anything. No matter what you're doing, whether you're or one in such as music like I am, I think I have this rule where I'll do one thing for my physical health, and one thing for my creative health, and one thing for my intellect or mental health every day. Like, so either exercise, read, or write a song, and/or basically doing one thing that stimulates each part of you every day, so you have a really balanced and well-rounded lifestyle and daily routine.
I love that. I love the concept of wrapping in kind of one thing into your day that really helps your overall sense of well-being. I think that's a really great tip for everyone watching at home. Well, thank you for your time, Cody. Please stick around. We'll have lots of questions coming in for you, no doubt, and we'll come back to you very soon. Now, next week, we're kicking off our celebrations of the 20-year anniversary of the Sydney Olympic Games. No doubt, if you're around then, you'll have some special memories of the time, whether it be as an athlete, a supporter, or a volunteer. Well, now's the time to dust off your old photo albums, because we're inviting you to share your favourite memories of 2000 on social media. Use the hashtag MySydney2000. Let's hear now from a few familiar faces from the Games.
I remember it like it was yesterday.
Hearing the roar of the crowd and seeing all of the faces of the Australian Taekwondo community in the stand. That's my Sydney 2000.
Walking into the opening ceremony behind Andrew Gaze and the rest of the Australian team, 120,000 screaming Aussies. That's my Sydney 2000.
I walked into the middle of the stadium and put down my beach towel and just looked around at all the audience and the sparkling lights. That's my Sydney 2000.
The deafening noise and the energy from the crowd that played every single point with us on Bondi Beach.
Kerry and I, 3 coaches, in a huddle, on the sand, jumping around, going, we won! We won the Olympic gold medal! And that's my Sydney 2000.
Walking out for my first event and hearing the roar and the passion from that home crowd is a memory I'll never forget. That's my Sydney 2000.
Hosting Olympic Sunrise for those magical 3 weeks, getting to interview so many fabulous athletes whilst enjoying the most incredible athletic performances. That's my Sydney 2000.
Some magical memories there. I have goosebumps. The Sydney Games is where my Olympic dreams kicked off, watching the Australian women's water polo team win the gold medal. And I look forward to seeing your My Sydney 2000 memories. So far today, we've spoken about how pursuing your passions can actually fuel your professional journey. It's now time to hear from one of our sailing Olympians and silver medalist from Rio, Lisa Darmanin. Lisa, thank you for joining us. I'm so excited you're here. It's wonderful to have you. Tell me, it's been a pretty interrupted year, but you have qualified for Tokyo. How have the preparations been going?
Preparations have definitely been disrupted, but I think everyone else's 2020 has been disrupted as well. But, you know, we're still out there training hard. It's great to be selected and still know that there's that start line. But, yeah, we've just enjoyed the Australian winter and watching the whales and the dolphins. And, yeah, I still love what I do.
Yes, spending a lot more time at home might be a bit of a pro. Not sure about winter. Tell me, where did your passion for sailing begin?
I started sailing when I was 9 years old. My mum and dad took me to the local sailing club in Manly, and I hated it. I was terrified. I didn't understand how the elements worked. I couldn't get around a racetrack, and I cried. I tried to abandon ship and swim to shore, and then all of a sudden it just clicked, and I realised that I had so much freedom out there on my little boat, steering it around with my brother. And it's pretty rare as a 9-year-old, your parents push you out to sea and say, see you in a few hours. So once I sort of understood how the wind worked and really embraced it, I fell in love with it, and I've been sailing as much as I can ever since.
So I'm guessing you spent many years on the water, around the water. Tell me about the Sailors by the Sea initiative.
So after Rio, the first sort of kick-off towards the Tokyo quad, I think everyone had a bit of an awakening in Rio. I mean, it was a beautiful place, a wonderful venue, but the water quality was not good. And there was a lot of fear around infections and getting sick, which is not something you really want to in Olympic preparation. So I think that sort of opened everybody's eyes that if we don't look after our oceans, this is what the rest of the world can turn up like. And Sydney, we're very lucky. We have structures and systems in place that protect our beautiful harbour, but you know, it can go that way. And I think after Rio, everyone thought we can't contribute to the world going this way. So we sort of banded together and decided that every time we leave a venue, we want to leave it cleaner than when we arrived. Because as a sailor, you'd be using a lot of materials. You'd be out in the water using water bottles, I'm guessing. Do you see a lot of that in the ocean when you're out there? Yeah, I guess it differs. I think with any sport, you've got to use materials. You travel the world, you get on planes, and yeah, drink bottles is a big one. And I think the biggest thing that us as sailors have achieved in the last sort of 4 years is that there's not plastic bottles littering the beaches or building up in coach boats. People have reusable bottles, and the events are providing filtered water that we can fill our water bottles up before we go out on the water. And every individual is doing something, and we're seeing the collective results. I'm guessing you're a pretty busy athlete, as most athletes are, particularly around competition time. Can you explain a little bit more about how that initiative rolls into your competitions and how you find the time for both? Yeah, I think it's hard as athletes. We sort of get quite selfish, and we get tunnel vision, and we think it's all about us. But it's quite nice. Just a few days before, we just set 1 hour, everyone comes together, and although you want to beat everybody around you, you come together for the shared passion of protecting our playground and our office. And it doesn't take long out of your day. It really doesn't affect your competition time, just to all get there and walk around the beach and pick things up. And I think it's really important because as I do each beach cleanup that I do, I learn so much about what we're dropping on the floor and we don't realise and ends up in our oceans. And you know, for me, that might be a little bit of electrical tape or little offcuts of rope, but everyone finds things and learns things every time they're doing the cleanup. And it's nice doing it with everyone, walking around together before we go into battle on the water the next day. Yes, I love how it's bringing you together, bringing you and your competitors together, as well as doing something really positive for the environment. Lisa, how would you say your passion for the sea, keeping it clean, the environment, does that make you a better athlete? How do the two kind of work together? I guess I touched on it before. We are quite selfish, so I think being able to do anything that's beyond your sport is good for you, whether for me that's the environment, but also advancing my career, all those other things, because you can be so defined by your sport and your results. I think it's really important to have things that bring you joy, keep you connected with other people, and it also, in a way, takes the pressure off the result, because that's not the only thing that defines you.
Very, very true. I did want to ask you, because we have a lot of athletes tuning in today, what advice would you have for them when they want to do something positive, they want to spend time on a passion that they may have, but they worry about taking time away from their sport? What's something that they can do to get involved?
It doesn't have to be all day cleaning up beaches. It can be simply bringing your own water bottle and refilling it, remembering your keep cup so we don't have, I know Aussies love coffee, so bring your own keep cup, and just remember to recycle, because I think it's really easy to forget that that's a great opportunity to, recycle, reuse, and all those very simple day-to-day things can make a big difference.
Lots of opportunities for small steps.
Yes, exactly.
Well, thank you, Lisa. Stick around. We'll have our Q&A very soon. Let's now turn to the driver behind Wellbeing Week. That's you, our audience. We've had plenty of questions submitted for Cody and Lisa today. So let's start with one for Cody. This has come in from Ben. Cody, how did you choose between swimming and music when you love both so much?
That's a really good question. I felt like I had learned so much from the sport and was ready to take on an opportunity that I felt maybe once in a lifetime and see where it went. And, I took a big risk moving to the States and pursuing it, but I knew that opportunities like the one I got don't come around very often. And, I like taking risks. And so, sometimes you have to.
That's true. I think it's also great to hear, Cody, that you do still keep up the swimming. So it might not necessarily need to be one or the other. You can still keep all of your loves involved in your life. Now, the next question we have for Lisa, and this has come in from Cara. Sometimes I feel like something such as helping the environment is a huge task. I don't know where to start. Any advice for how a track athlete, as opposed to a sailor, like me, can do my part?
I think what I'm sort of looking at within my own sport, and you can probably do the same, is what products do I use? So I'm assuming a track athlete would go through a fair amount of shoes. So figuring it out how you can upcycle them, work with your sponsor about how you can recycle, or handing it down to the talent ID who's coming up that would just love a fresh pair of shoes. So think about what you use day to day and how you can expand its lifespan.
Great practical advice. I do love that. Lisa, next question that has come in for you, Jody, on Facebook. Did you take up any hobbies this year during lockdown that you've kept up?
I don't know if I've kept them up, but I love the creative side, and when I'm sailing and traveling the world, I don't have time to, make clothes or paint things. So I was able to, get really in touch with my creative side, and I don't make the time for it as much, but it's still much more than it was last year.
Well, you have a fair bit on your plate, so good to hear you picked up something new. Lisa, another question that's come in for you, Georgia. She asked this through YouTube. Lisa, how have you continued your training during COVID?
So the first lockdown sort of situation where we were stuck at home, we were really lucky. We stole all the weights from the team gym and set up home gyms. So I had a pretty good fitness and strength block at home. And then luckily we were allowed on the water not too far. But I think for us it's super challenging because we're used to having international competitions and training partners. So you just have to make the most of every day and try be the best you can do and hope that that's going to prepare you for when you get on the start line.
Now, another question that's come in for you, Lisa, and this is from Sam. And Sam would like to know how many Olympic Games you're aiming to go for.
Well, we've had this year delay, so that gets you a year closer to Paris. So we'll see how we go in Tokyo. But I love what I do. I love being out on the water every day, and I love learning. So watch this space.
We'll see. Lisa, last question for you that has come in. Any tips for a want-to-be sailing Olympian?
If you
As a sailor, I would say sail as many boats as possible, enjoy being on the water, learn as much as you can, don't get too narrow too fast, try lots of things, and then you'll find out what you love and then you'll be good at it.
Very, very good advice. Thank you, Lisa. And thank you to everyone who submitted questions today. Please keep them coming throughout the week. As I mentioned earlier, Allianz is our Wellbeing Week partner this year, and they've recently launched a campaign aiming to help remove the stigma around mental health to show that even the strongest among us are sometimes vulnerable, and that's okay. Let's hear now from three-time Olympian and Allianz ambassador, Kate Campbell.
The more success that I had, the more I feared failure. Things that used to excite me and challenge me began to give me really bad anxiety. The only place where success is possible is also where failure is possible. So if I'm not willing to accept the risk of failure, then I'm also not willing to accept the risk to succeed.
We're fortunate enough to have Kate as a guest on Thursday this week. Today, though, we're very happy to have Jill Large from Allianz joining us to talk more about the research that Allianz conducted this year into the role of Olympians and Paralympians and mental health. Jill, thank you for joining us. Can you tell me what were some of the most interesting findings from this research?
Thanks for having me, Amy. Yes, as you said, we released the findings of some research that we undertook recently when we announced our athlete ambassadors. And that research brought about some interesting findings. Particularly, we found that 2/3 of Australians actually felt as though our athletes' mental strength was even more important than their physical strength. We also found that 2/3 of Australians wanted to hear more from our athletes around their journeys with mental health. So it's obviously a topic that Australians are very supportive of hearing about from our athletes.
And Jill, why do you think it's so important for us to celebrate not only the physical but the mental strength of our athletes?
Look, for us at Allianz, as I said, we have our ambassadors, and we've been lucky enough to work with Kate Campbell, who you've just seen, who's absolutely fantastic, as well as Owen Wright, one of the great Aussie surfers and Tokyo hopeful. And they've just been brilliant in the way that they've shared their stories, not just the challenges that they've faced over the course of their careers, but also particularly over the last 6 months since the postponement of the Games and all of the obstacles that COVID has thrown up in terms of their training and their lack of being able to compete. And it's been great for us just to learn about, what it's taken for them to get through this time and for Australians to really be able to connect with those athletes. I think the broader team as a whole is doing an incredible job. And I think hearing more from the athletes and really being able to sort of have that empathy with them is just going to give us even more of a reason to cheer for them when they are back competing and just getting to know them better as people.
Definitely, because it has been such a tough year for everyone. So being able to hear from our athletes who are experiencing similar things can be really reassuring. Now, Jill, what are some of the mental health initiatives that Allianz is getting behind in the lead up to the Tokyo Olympics and Paralympics?
Yeah, so we're really proud. As you said, we're the presenting partner of Wellbeing Week this week, which is a fantastic initiative by the AOC. We are partnered with the AOC long term, and we'll continue our support with the Wellbeing program right through to next year's wellness engagement sessions, which kicked off this year. So we'll be continuing that support into next year as well. And then we also partner with Paralympics Australia, and we've been partnered with them since 2011 now, and we're really looking at channeling our support for them through to their mental wellbeing and mentoring programs that they have in place as well. Plus, of course, we have our athlete ambassadors who will be cheering along, as well as the rest of the team on their journey to Tokyo and for the Games next year, which is now amazingly less than a year to go.
It is, it's not long, and it sounds like there's a lot to look forward to. So Jill, thank you for your time today, and I know I speak on behalf of everyone when I say thank you to Allianz for your support. Well, a huge thank you to all of you for tuning in today. That wraps up day one of Wellbeing Week, Empower Your Passion. I hope you all found some inspiration in hearing from our guests today, who are making such a valuable contribution to not only their communities, but the world. To me, it's clear that pursuing your passions can really enhance your overall sense of well-being. Tomorrow, Wellbeing Week continues with the theme of Empower Your Future, and we're lucky enough to be joined by two-time Olympian and Commonwealth Games champion Jane Fleming and award-winning landscape gardener and TV presenter Charlie Albone. We'll be live from 1 p.m. See you then.